Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm back with a new devlog video for the game Quantum Ruins. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rick. I'm currently developing solo a game called Quantum Ruins as a hobby on my free time. And today I'd like to go more into the details of how I work, and I'd like to present to you the 3 big steps that I take to plan and build new levels for my game. As you guys know, I've just entered the 3rd 4-month development cycle of Quantum Ruins, and now I've actually started in the month of May to build the actual game, so the levels that you will be playing with the final product. I divide the building process into 3 big steps, and I'm going to go through all of them in details because you guys have been asking for more detailed, informative content, and I hope that this content will be helpful for those of you who have started to build your own games and want to see a little bit how I work. So first of all, the 3 big steps that I take are the following. The very first step is a brainstorming and planning step. I take the time to decide what has to be present in each single level, and I'm going to show you guys how I do it. The second step is the drawing step. I use a tiled system. I have created a certain number of tile sets, and I use those tile sets to draw the level. The third step is the coding step. I take what I drew and I put it in Godot, and then in Godot I add everything related to the gameplay. Let's start with the very first step, brainstorming and planning. First of all, the very first thing that I did was come up with the story for the game. The story is 100% finished. Of course, there are some details here and there that may need to be adjusted, but I know where the story begins and when the story ends. And that has been very helpful for me because it gives me the big frame of what the game has to be, and it fixes the limits of what has to be or doesn't have to be in the game. I wrote a full Word document with the story of Quantum Ruins from start to end, and based on that document I decided how many areas I needed to have in the game, and starting from those areas I decided how many sub areas I wanted to have. Once I had the story for the game, I knew that I wanted to have 5 different areas in the game. I've recently filmed a video about the 5 areas that will be present in the game, so if you want to have more information about that, you can go check the other video out. Once I knew what those 5 areas were, I had to brainstorm every single area separately, and I did that using 2 different tools. I did part of that brainstorming in Krita, I did it live on Twitch, and as you can see in here, you can see that I have divided one big area, this mountain area, into sub areas. I fixed the max number of sub areas to 5 so that I have some limits and I don't end up having a game that is too big to build, given that this is my very first game ever. During this brainstorming section, I thought about what had to be in every single sub area. I knew that in one big area, the mountain for example, I had to have an exploration base, I had to have a place where you can collect and upgrade, I wanted to have some specific puzzles, some transitions from one area to the other, and all of that had to be clear before I actually started drawing the levels. I also put a lot of attention into the connections between the different areas and on whether you can or cannot access a single area with or without an upgrade. Since I'm going for a Metroidvania game, the exploration and the upgrades that allow you to explore more are a core part of this style of games. So I really had to make sure that I knew exactly how you would access every single area. I did this job in Krita for 2 of the areas of the game, for the mountains and the jungle, and the rest was done on paper. So as you can see here, for example, for this underwater palace area, I started by drawing the big profile of what I wanted the area to look like, and then I have divided this into sub areas that then have to contain a certain number of things. Another important thing that I did at this point was to put a number to every single sub area. I cannot stress this enough. This is going to be so helpful when you actually have to build the game in Godot. I know that I'm having 5 areas and each area has 5 sub areas, and so each sub area has a 2-digit number, the first one corresponding to the area and the second one to the sub area. So I have divided the whole world into these small sub areas, and each one of those has one unique number. So here we have 3.0, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. In the mountain we have 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, etc. Once this job was done for every single area, I could have a look at the game as a whole, and so I could realize whether there were some parts that have to be fixed because maybe some areas cannot be accessed or other areas that you shouldn't be able to access to are actually accessible. I worked on doing some brainstorming, but at a more global level. Once the brainstorming was done, I moved to the planning. And the tool that I decided to use for the planning is Evernote. I decided to pick Evernote because I really like how you can create tables easily. You guys know I'm an engineer. I enjoy having things organized in tables. They speak to me and they help keep my work organized. What I did is that I created a big table in which each row corresponds to a specific sub area, and all the columns correspond to things that have to be in those sub areas. Why are those sub areas important for me? Because one sub area is one Godot scene. So I know exactly how many Godot scenes I need to have and what has to be in all of those Godot scenes. Very, very important. If we have a look at the rows first, as you can see, we have the 5 areas, so the mountain, the jungle, the underwater palace, the desert, and the sanctuary. And we have a subdivisions here of the sub areas. We have 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, etc. all the way through 5.3 for a total of 24 sub areas, or if you prefer, 24 Godot scenes that you can explore in the game. I then divided the columns into categories. The first category is the story, and for this part here, of course, I had as a very important reference the Word document that I wrote before doing all of this work. I built this big table so that each column answers a very specific question. In the story category, for example, I have 4 questions here. Is there a base in this sub area? And the answer is either no or yes. And as you can see here, very clearly, I know where all the exploration bases are within my game. 1.2, 2.1, 3.0, etc. Is there going to be a cutscene triggered in this sub area? And so I know in advance that in these Godot scenes, I'll have to have a specific cutscene. Are there going to be murals or a special building in this sub area? See, throughout the game, there are going to be murals which tell the story of the ruins. I really like to do this environmental storytelling, I guess, where a lot of things are just not directly said. So again, I've answered this question and I've added a yes or no for every single sub-scene. Next, the upgrades. Is there going to be an upgrade in this sub-area? It's very important because it's part of this metric genre that I'm going for. It's very important that there are upgrades and I need to know where those upgrades are. The next category is map connections. Since I've built so far this very solid, robust system with numbers, I can list pretty easily what each area is connected to. For example, if I have a look at 1.0, I know that 1.0 is connected to all of these, and I've done this work for every single sub area in here. Also, what I really like about this is that by looking at the first number, the 2-digit, I know where you'll be able to go from one area to the other. If we have a look at here, for example, 2.0, you can go to 1.1, so you can go back to the mountain, but you can also go to 4.1, and 4 is the desert area. So I know already that from 2.0, you'll be able to go to different areas in the world. The second column here is for the coin doors. As you guys know, there's going to be a coin doors system. You can collect coins and you can use those coins to open some extra special passages, and this will allow for some extra exploration. You can explore the map in a different ways using the coins that you collect. The idea here is that I want you to use those coins. I don't want to just have collectibles that do not serve any purpose, and those collectibles can be used to unlock different paths across the map. The third category is collectibles. I still haven't worked on filling this in because this is not the main priority right now, but it's gonna come in handy a little bit later on in development. I need to know how many coins I have in each sub area, whether there are chests, how many of those, and the item ID of the item that you collect for each chest. I need to know whether there are going to be recipes in this sub area and whether there are going to be some special collectibles. The fourth category is about the enemies. What type of enemy is going to be present in this sub area and the loot ID, because each enemy is going to have a specific loot if you're going to use that loot to craft items. So it's very important for me to know where the materials for a specific recipe are. I'm also adding here whether in a sub area there's going to be a boss fight in the game. In the game there are going to be 3 mandatory boss fights and 1 extra secret boss fight, so I need to know where that has to trigger. The fourth category is this puzzle. I have divided this into 2 columns. Are there going to be door switches and is crafting needed? Because in some cases you will just have some doors and switches that you have to activate, and in the other areas you'll actually have to use some items that you need to craft. And so I'm trying to keep the game as interesting as possible, and so I want to make sure that there is a good variety in terms of door switches and also some puzzles which require crafting. This will give me a clear idea of how many door switches puzzles there are and how many need crafting and all of that. On top of that, each area is going to have an area specific puzzle, and I need to know in every single area where this area specific puzzle is. So that's what this column is for. The very last column is for what I call fixables. And basically the idea here is that I'd like for you to fix the ruins. So across the map, there are going to be some points where you can fix the ruins with the items that you craft. And so I need to have a way to track that. So I'm going to put in here the number of fixables and what is required to fix those fixables. I believe that this is possibly one of the most important steps. You do not want to skip this brainstorming and planning part because it really will come in handy, and you can very easily set goals for yourself and track how much you have done of your game and how far you are into creating the final product. Moving on to the second step, it is the actual drawing of the levels. And this is done in my case in Tiled. I highly recommend using Tiled. It's very easy to use and it can be integrated with Godot very easily. What I do is that I have defined a number of tile sets in Tiled, and I can draw my maps in Tiled, and by saving these maps in Godot, they are automatically updated all nicely, and this is a very powerful tool for level creation. So if we have a look in here, I've drawn so far the 1.0 and the 1.1 based on the brainstorming that I did before. If I have a look at the 1.0, I knew about all of the connections that I had to have, that I wanted to have a tutorial part, and that I wanted to have a coin door down here, and the transitions to all the other areas. And what I did is that I fixed the number of tiles. That's a good question that I got a couple of times. I've decided to fix the number of tiles for one sub area to a maximum of 8,000 tiles. I've experimented with Godot scenes, and some scenes go up to 20,000 tiles. So you can actually have one single Godot scene to be pretty big, but I decided to have smaller areas so that I can put more focus on every single one of them. And also in terms of performance, a 8,000 tile map will of course perform better than a 20,000 tile scene. I've done this creative process on Twitch, so if you're interested about the development of the game and of the level creation, we do that live every Wednesday from 7 to 10 p.m. We have a Twitch stream devoted to the development of the game, and over the past few weeks I've focused on brainstorming and on creating these levels. I think it's very important to add here that I'm not actually doing any polishing. I'm focusing on drawing the skeleton of every single map, and I'm putting the emphasis on the actual gameplay. So I'm constantly asking myself questions like, can I perform this jump? Is it clear that you actually need to go this way? Can I access this with a specific upgrade? What am I going to put in here? Is it going to be water? Are there going to be enemies? All of those questions so that I have an interesting level, but at the same time, something that it's enjoyable to play without paying too much attention to the graphical details of the map. Once the drawing step is done, I move on to the third step, which is actually building the scene in Godot. And as you can see here, I've opened the tiled map that I have in Godot, and I started adding things to the Godot scene. This is the Godot scene 1_0. I am making sure that this naming stays consistent throughout every single scene in the game. And I've started adding the player, of course, the GUI, the inventory, the minimap, the pause menu, things like doors, water, the enemies, the chests, etc. So I'm actually starting to build the playable Godot scene. And of course, when building this Godot scene, I have as a reference the respective row in my table. So you can go here in the 1.0, I can see whether there's going to be a base or not, a cutscene, an upgrade, etc. Very important here, I need to make sure that I have the connections to all of these maps. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I need to have 4 connections to all those different maps. And so just take the time to make sure that everything that is in this table is actually present in the Godot scene. And something that I really enjoy about this process is that I can easily play the Godot scene and I can modify real time the tiled scene. So as you can see here, I'm already playing through the 1.0, and if there is a jump that I can perform, for example, I can just go back to tiled and I can modify that. So overall, I'm very happy with the framework that I've set up in here. It has allowed me to work very productively and to set some clear goals. If each week I work on one single sub area, in 24 weeks, basically, I'll have the first skeleton of the game done. So I'm very happy about that. So to sum things up, I started by writing the story of the game. I did some brainstorming of all of the areas that I wanted in the game. I did some planning for every single one of those areas. I then moved on to the drawing of every single area. And then finally, I moved all of that into Godot. And I make sure that every single Godot scene has everything that I have in my table. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know down below what you think about this way of working. Do you work in a similar fashion? What are your thoughts about it? And I hope that this video was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for the support, and I'll see you all in my next video.